what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
I'm against it. I've said that years ago when the legislation came up. And I've been also clear on it when it comes to the Supreme Court of Canada. If the Supreme Court was going to hear the case, we would be intervening. And again, they just said that they would be hearing the case, so no surprise, we will be intervening.
Okay, that's Melanie Joly, our Foreign Affairs Minister, on the ruling today by the Supreme Court that they will, in fact, hear the challenge to Quebec's Bill 21. James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette on the line. So, Jim, I'm not sure how you deal with this. Is it a surprise? Is it not a surprise that the Supreme Court chose to hear this case?
No, I think the rendezvous between Bill 21 and the Supreme Court of Canada was inevitable. And I got to tell you, there's a lot on the line here because it's not just about whether or not people can wear religious symbols and be a part of Quebec's civil service. The question is, and it's a question that has already been answered by two lower court decisions, that, you know what, provincial legislatures can turn around, and if they feel like it, they can make your fundamental right go away. And it's not a damn thing anyone can do about it. It can be used preemptively. It is well within the aegis of a provincial legislature to do so. And this is something that was the notwithstanding clause, was this deal with the devil, this built-in cancerous cell in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that allowed it to be brought home, that allowed these politicians back in the 80s, look at us, we reconstituted the Canadian Constitution. Isn't that great? We've got this Charter of Rights and Freedoms, except it's void where prohibited by law, and that's not a joke. And the fact is, the Bill 21 case is pointing out a rather dangerous trend in this country, it's perfectly legal trend in this country, that says what was generally considered to be the rule of law. You have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms that's sacrosanct, as Clifford Lincoln said, rights are rights are rights. Except, well, no, they're not, because when you take them to court and you've invoked the notwithstanding clause, which is also a part of the law, they don't exist. Rights are not rights. They can be taken away. And every 5 years, they have to be, you can get them back in 5 years if the legislature feels like doing it. But this is where we are. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting decision that we finally get from the Supreme Court. Because on the one hand, they realize that they are there to interpret the law. They're not there to make political statements. And although they have in the past said perhaps it's up to the legislatures to turn around and deal with this, although to get an amendment that would remove the notwithstanding clause, once again, 7 provinces, more than half the population of the country. And look where we are, Aaron. Look where we are. Look where politics has brought us. Never mind the fruitcake south of the border. Look at some of the swaggering little tin pot populists we have in this country who wouldn't think twice, and indeed haven't thought twice, about invoking the notwithstanding clause to further their agenda. When Francois Legault, with a straight face, says the debate over secularism has been going on for decades, okay? Basically, he's turning around and saying, I'm counting on you not having a clue about what's going on, because obviously that's not the case. We never heard about this up until Francois Legault and his friends at the Journal de Montreal began screaming about, say, an outing at a cabane à sucre by Muslims where they said, could you not put pork in the pork and beans? And that was the assault on the Quebec nation. This is rubbish, but it has been used. And all I can say is I find it funny to hear Melanie Joly hopping up and down saying, we're going to get involved. I'm wondering where that passion was with Bill 96, which is an equally egregious violation of rights, of Quebecers, of Canadians' rights. And yet the Trudeau government, Trudeau himself, adopted a doormat approach to dealing with Francois Legault on that. But in the end, honestly, Aaron, and I've said this from the very beginning, in the end, it won't be about religious symbols. It's going to be about everything. Right now, everything's cool. Gay marriage is cool, all right, until it isn't. And then if a province decides to say, well, no, we don't recognize those civil unions, notwithstanding the fact that, you can claim discrimination, that's where we are. And that is scary as hell. And if it isn't as scary as hell for you, it should be, because there's nothing saying, folks, that you and your particular rights won't be next.
You know, it's interesting because I think for people to understand, it really is about framing, isn't it? It's not just simply the ability to use a clause that's in the Canadian Constitution, but it goes to the point of how that clause can be used and when that clause can be used, and that's a Pandora's box.
Well, actually it is, but then again, it is terrifyingly simple, Aaron. You can use it whenever the hell you want.
As it stands,
can be invoked whenever you feel like it, and you don't have to justify it. And both the Superior Court judgment and the Court of Appeal judgment on 21 both came to the same conclusion. I mean, I haven't read all 200 pages of the Appeal Court decision, but I know in terms of Superior Court, the judge said, yes, this is hurting people's lives. And yes, this is violating their rights. But you know what? My hands are tied because they've used the notwithstanding clause. And that notwithstanding clause, before we start sniffing and pointing our fingers at the Americans saying it's turning into a dictatorship, that notwithstanding clause is as Canadian as maple syrup on your beaver tail. That is a part of our Constitution deliberately created because back then there was they wanted to, the typical Canadian compromise or deal with the devil, take your choice, that, we want to get the Constitution, we want to have, the Canadian Constitution. Well, fine, we won't leave it to the courts to determine what rights are going to apply in any context. We will leave it to whatever every 4 years, whoever happens to get elected to a provincial legislature, and then turns around and says, you know what, we don't like this right. We're going to blow it up for 5 years. That's exactly where we are.
So, can I just ask, Jim? Were you surprised that the Supreme Court decided to take this on?
No, I don't think they could have avoided it. I mean, they listen. They have a duty to come to a decision, to at least set the record straight for everyone out there, for me, for everyone who's listening, to say, you may not like it, and we may not like it, but this is where we are, and this is what the law says. It's not about some concept. It's not about some, airy-fairy kind of, hand over your heart invocation of equality. And no. It's about the notwithstanding clause. It's about, as I say, the rather pedestrian and frightening reality that anybody who happens to get themselves elected to the head of a provincial government can turn your rights off 5 years at a time.
Let me move on and talk about the federal Liberal leadership race because we haven't yet. By the way, we'll point out Karina Gould, the most recent entry, I guess the next to most recent entry, is going to join us on the show tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, good.
And I think most people don't know a whole lot about her, so I'm looking forward to that. But today did you see the Mark Carney ad?
I haven't seen the ad. No.
Oh, it's great. It's about 2 minutes long. It's they're starting to heat up a little bit. Who's in his camp now today? Anybody come over today?
Oh, you got François-Philippe Champagne, so he's going to join Melanie Joly and Stephen Guilbeault. And a lot is being made of the fact that these are Quebec cabinet ministers. Listen, with all due respect to everybody that I'm talking about right now, Aaron, does it really matter when you consider what a train wreck Justin Trudeau turned the Liberal Party of Canada into? When you consider the lack of credibility, the lack of energy, the lack of a future that has been inflicted on that party, does it, it's not like back in the day, well, tremendous cabinet minister support, that should be a big deal. No, you can go out and you can sign up members, and there may be some surprises, Aaron, by the time the smoke clears, simply because I think a lot of the political geography that used to apply to the Liberal Party of Canada when it was still a viable party, which as far as I'm concerned, it no longer is a viable party in this country, that doesn't apply anymore. So yes, I think it's great. We're talking, we have sources now saying that Employment Minister Steve McKinnon is going to support Carney as well. And I'm sure Mark Carney is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the fact is, in the end, this is not about winning over the hearts and minds of pundits or analysts.
Yeah.
Or political writers. It's winning the minds of card-carrying Liberals, ideally the Liberals you sold card memberships to, and having them vote for you. And I'm not really sure, and as I say, with all due respect to the people that I'm mentioning, whether the currency of being a cabinet minister or being or coming from this part of the country or that part of the country matters anymore. Remember, we've seen the polls as well of people who describe themselves as Liberal supporters, and one would suspect as well, perhaps Liberal Party members, who felt the party had turned their back on that. Trudeau should have gone ages ago. and they were not being listened to, and that this party was no longer a reflection of what they believed in. Well, I don't think these people have moved to Mars, Aaron. I think they're still around. And I think you had better consider them in your calculations, because failure to do so is going to be, you may pay the price by the time these votes are counted. But all that said, it's great, it's fun. It's like, and you go into it with the horse race mentality, and, oh, look, this one's supporting him, and that one's, well, what's going on with Chrystia Freeland? But on the other hand, for all we know, Frank Bayless is out there signing up a zillion people. We haven't seen it on the news. We haven't seen it on the wires. So, we don't know. But in the end, that's what counts. It's the ground game. It's getting people to believe in you. It's getting actual people to go out and vote for you. And with all due respect, in the end, they may have tremendous experience. And they may know a lot of political reporters. But in the end, any Trudeau cabinet minister is one vote. That's all, and that's the formula I think we all do well to remember.
Jim, one last thing real quick. I'm going to ask our listeners, as I did just after 2 o'clock, whether in the face of, these U.S. Threats or tariff threats and Donald Trump basically doubling down again today, it's going to change anything with respect to how you act. And one guy brought up a great point, and someone else mentioned this. Instead of traveling to the U.S., right, and we represent a significant amount of business to the U.S. in tourism, maybe travel across Canada, and suggested, to incentivize Canadians, why don't we do something they do in other countries where if you're a Canadian and you want to travel within the country, you get discounts. And I brought up in Mexico, you check in as a Mexican citizen to a hotel, same one I would check into, you're paying 30% less. Why don't we do that here?
Because we're cheap and greedy, but it's an excellent idea. But no, honestly, I'm serious. I mean, I can't believe this country was built by the railways, and sometimes it costs more to take a train someplace than fly. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Why doesn't corporate Canada get its act together? Maybe that is what Donald Trump is counting on. That in the end, they're just going to wimp out and do whatever they do to improve their bottom line. But I think it's an excellent idea, and I would back that to the hilt.
Jim, I thank you. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Matt.